Hi there. So we're going to have a look at the introduction to some algebra. And I've got a couple of questions for you first. And I don't want you to write this down. I just want you to quietly, just for about 30 seconds or so, in a moment I want you to pause the video, but not until I've posed these two questions. I want you to have a little think about, firstly, what is algebra? Because that's what we're going to talk about today. And also, why would we use algebra? Okay, so if the video can be paused now, and then you've got about 30 seconds to a minute just to talk to someone next to you, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so pause the video now. Cool, so hopefully you've come up with a couple of ideas. I think personally that algebra is using letters to represent values. Now when I say values, what we mean are numbers. So these are going to be numbers that, well, I'll tell you what. Let's go on to the next question. So if they're using letters to represent values, it's not just using letters for the sake of it. It's not just to make it harder. In fact, in some ways, it makes our life a bit easier. So instead of having to know exact numbers, we can use letters to represent them. But why we use them would be for two main reasons, really. We might not know the value in a calculation. It might be a missing value that we want to find. So we could use a letter to represent it. Or sometimes we might want to be able to change the value. So we might want to keep doing essentially the same calculation again and again, but with different figures. And that's what we would call a formula. A formula for, say, working out how much flour you need in a recipe. Now, you might want a recipe for 3 people. You might want the same, set of the same recipe, essentially, the same set of cakes, but for 20 people. In which case, it's the same kind of calculation, but you need to put that different number in, the number of people that the recipe is for, because you will need to scale up the recipe. So that's why we might use algebra. Use letters to represent values, okay? So we've got some basic rules. Now you might need to occasionally go, oh, this is going a bit fast, please can you pause it so I can get some notes, because if I'm writing it on the left hand side here, I want you to have these notes in your book nice and clear, please. If you've got a couple of different colours, then that's ideal as well. So algebra has some really basic rules. Even the most complex algebra, which we use, which could be, for university stuff, it could be a professor working out some vital bit of maths to get people to the moon or Mars. It still has the same basic rules. And so, first things first, let's look at, so we've got A here, and I'm adding another A. I don't know what the value of A is, but what I do know is I've got it twice. Now, I would write this down as 2A. Okay, so make sure you get that written down. So if I've got A, and I add another A to it, I would put 2A. Now, it's really important that the number goes at the front. Now, what this is really telling us is that this is like 2 times by A. There's kind of a hidden times sign in there. 2 lots of A. Whatever it is, we've got 2 of it. So if we were doing this with A plus another A, well, we have got here 3A. We've got 3 of them. We just put 3A. Just like that. So make sure we've got that written down. But we could, of course, just write this another way. Just like I did 2 times A is 2A, while 3 times A could be also written as 3A. And as I said, we always put the number at the front. So the ones in blue here, these are what we call simplified. These are the nice versions that we want to see when we see your algebra. So if you see it like a question like you've got on the left here, and it says simplify, the answer we want is what's written on the right. So what if we don't have a number at all? What if I've just got 2 letters multiplied together? So whatever A is, I'm going to times it by B. Well, we have a really nice simple way of doing this in algebra, and we just put the 2 things touching, so 2 things next to each other, because in algebra, touching means times. Okay, so A times B would be AB. If I had X times y, it would be xy. And similarly, we've got a way of writing that something is divided as well. And we kind of spoke about this recently in class as well, but when we're using numbers. So if I've got A divided by B, then I could write this as A over B. And this means divide. If you ever see this, even if it's a fraction, it means divide. So if we want to simplify A divided by B, I would just write A over B. Okay. Now this is a different one. I've got A times by A. Now you might think that we'd do it like the AB. Maybe we'd just put A. You know, like my car's broken down and I need some help. But that's not actually what we put there. Let's just get my rubber, rub that out. What we would do here, if it's a letter times by itself, we would actually put the letter with a little 2 to show that it's times by itself twice. And notice that the little 2 there are 2 A's, which is why it's a 2. Okay. So just whilst I'm doing this, make sure you're getting these notes down. If you do need to pause, please tell whoever's in charge of the computer, unless it's yourself, and then tell yourself. But if you could pause it, make sure you've got these notes written down. Now, what about if I got 3 of them then? So let's think. I've got A times A there, where there's 2, and that becomes A squared. I've just noticed, look, 2 different types of A. That's not important. That's just where whoever made the PowerPoint, not sure who that was, just used the wrong font. All right, so that's not significant. This is still just A times A is A squared. What about this one with A times A times A? There's 3 of them, so it's going to be, no calling out, A cubed. Yeah, A with a little 3. Now we could say this is A cubed, or you could say A to the power of 3. And again, if there were 4 A's times together, that would be A to the power of 4, with a little 4 up there, okay? Right, so where are we going with this? Right, I want you to try and apply this now. I want you to look at these questions and just have a go at these ones. So here's a few that I want you to try and simplify. Now write down the question. I can't say that enough. Write down the question and then try and write down the answer to go with it, okay? The video's going to get paused now. I want you to look back at your notes, make sure you finish those notes, and then try and apply them to these questions here. See if you can simplify them. Okay, so pause the video now. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to skip on. Okay, so we've unpaused. Let's cross that out. It's not paused anymore. Now, 6 times y. This is just like where we had 3 times a, except different number, different letter. So we just put 6y. They're touching, so it means times. In algebra, touching means times. I've got d plus another d. Well, there are 3 of them, and they're just added together. So I've got 3 lots of d. So that is 3d. 3 lots of d. D divided by e. Now, you might think, well, I like the divide sign. I want to use it. It's my friend. It's not your friend. Your friend is the fraction line. Yeah, there you go. That's a much better way of writing it. It's much neater, trust me. In years to come, you'll go, oh, thank God Mr. Nice showed me that. Much better. So d divided by e is d over e. Now, g times by g. So it's a letter times by itself this time, so I'm not going to put gg, like I'm a horse. I'm going to put g with the little 2, which means squared. So g times by itself, g squared. And, oh, okay, well, what's going on here? Now, I've got m times itself, but there's an h as well. Well, if I just had h times m, let's pretend I just had h times m. I would put them touching, wouldn't I? h, m. But I've got 2 m's here. So it's m times m as well. So if I want all 3 of them, what I'm actually going to do is h m squared. Now the m is the bit that's squared, and then it's times by h. Right, I hope that makes some sense. If you got those wrong, I hope you've corrected them. If not, you need to correct them now. And hopefully the teacher that's there is going to give you this sheet. Okay? And I want you to work on this sheet, but I need to tell you how it works. You might have done one like this before, you might not. So these things on the right here, let's just circle all of these. These are questions, okay? And I want you to simplify them. So you need to write your answer next to it as well. And we're going to do the first one together, right? So I want you to write your answer next to the question. I've put an arrow just where I want to write this, but still. I'm going to put equals, and then if I simplify this, I think this one is going to be b divided by a with a line. Okay, so that's what I think my answer is. So you write the answer there, and then you cross it off the grid. So you find it in the grid, and you cross it off. Okay? Now, when you get to the end, if you notice here, there are 5, 10, 15, 20 questions, but there are 25 answers. There are actually more answers than there are questions. So at the end, you should have 5 of these left over. And I want you to put them in the boxes here. So you put one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. So your 5 leftover answers go here. And if you look, there should be some kind of pattern to them, some kind of sequence, but there's one missing from the sequence. So what they want you to do is try and find the missing expression. And all of these are expressions. Okay, we should talk about that another time. But all these little bits are expressions. So whichever one you think is missing from the sequence, you put in the end box there. So make sure you're writing your answers at the top, cross them off the grid. The 5 that are left over go in the box. And if you think it's a sequence and you can spot the missing one, put it down in the right-hand corner. Okay? Right, so we're going to press pause on the video now. You can have a look at those sheets, write your answers, etc., etc., etc. Off you go, and unpause when we think most people are done. So that might take 10 minutes. Some people might be a bit quicker, but then you can check your answers to double check. Maybe we could buddy up and help other people. Okay, so pause the video now, please. Okay, we are done. So I'm going to whiz through these answers and you can check and correct yours. And if you didn't finish them all, that's fine. Just make sure you're putting in the correct answers in a different colour pen than what you worked in, okay? So ideally a green pen. So let's get marking. So B over A would be the first one. We said that. Then 5 times B would be 5B. There are 5 lots of B. I just need to find it in my grid. And everyone's saying, it's down there, sir. Why can't you see it? B plus B. Now this isn't B squared because it's not times, it's add. So it's just saying there are 2 of them. So we put 2B. So there's 2B on my grid. Same with the A plus A. It's not times, it's add. There are just 2 lots of A. So 2A. A times A times A down here then. Now these ones are multiplied and there's 3 of them. So we put A with a little 3. A to the power of 3. Or sometimes we call it A cubed. Okay, at the top of this column then, 4 times C would be 4C. Cross it off the grid. Now we're getting a bit harder. A times C. Now we've got 2 A's times together, so that's A squared. And then it's times by a C, so we just put it touching the C. So A squared C. I just need to find it. There it is, down the bottom left. And here we go. We've got A times B times B. So the A first, and then 2 B's times together. So that's B squared. I don't know if you just heard my cat. He's saying, I love algebra. He's an algebra cat. Okay, next one. A times B. So this is just like this one above, but different combination. Now the A's times together, so that's A squared. And then it's times by B, so it's just touching the B. So A squared B. This one, A times A first of all, so that's A squared, A with a little 2. And then it's times by B, so we put a B. And then times by C, so we put a C. A squared BC, as easy as algebra. Michael Jackson should have done that version. Right, A times B, so they're touching, so we put A, B. Nice and easy, that one, hopefully. Divide again. Oh, we're right back to the start, aren't we? B divided by C, so we put B divided by C with the fraction line instead. Do you know that line has a special name, actually? That fraction line has a special name. And if only I knew it, I'd tell you what it was. Right, A times A. Now that's A times itself, so it's A squared. So that's up there. A divided by B is A over B, like that. There's A over B. A times by C. Nice and easy, just touching means times. Okay, remember that forever. In algebra, touching means times. A times by C is AC. Last column then. So 4 times by A is 4A. For A's a jolly good fellow. Anyway, A times A is A squared. And then it's times by B. And then times by C. So we've got A squared BC, which we had down here as well. It's a repeated question, isn't it? So we've got, should be another A squared BC. There it is. 4 times by B is 4B. So here we go. Let's cross off the 4B. And then B plus B plus B. Remember, this is not times. This is just add. So we go back to just putting how many there are. There are 3 B's. Great pencil. Well, probably my favourite pencil, a 3B pencil. and then b times by b times by c. So this is this fundamental difference, isn't it, between adding and timesing. This time we put b with a little flying 3 next to it, which means cubed, or b to the power of 3. b times by itself 3 times. Okay, now let's look at what we've got here. We've got a 2a. You don't have to do these in the same order I'm doing them. 3a. I've then got a 2b. There's no 3b though, is there? Right, so let's go to the next one. 4a and 4b. Now, if you look at this sequence, we've got 2a and 3a. I've got 4a and 4b. I've got 2b. Oh, we're missing one, aren't we? 2a, 3a, 4a, 2b. Ah, there's the sequence. Look, 2a, 3a, and 4a. We've got all of those. We've got 2b. We haven't got 3b, but we have got 4b. So that would be the one in this little sequence that's missing. So the answer here should be 3b. Okay, well done. Right. Could we get that glued in? Now, if there's no glue in the room you're in at the moment, please put your name on those sheets so they don't get lost, and tuck them into your book, please. Right. Well done. Nice one.